Hello, dear viewer, and welcome to another episode of the Catholic League Forum. I'm Mike McDonald, Director of Communications at the Catholic League, and joining me today is President and CEO of the Catholic League, Bill Donohue. Now, dear viewer, normally on the forum, we like to take a look back at some of the important stuff that have been going on at the Catholic League, and we actually have had a lot of important stuff going on this week, so do check out our website, catholicleague.org. We'll have a link in the description below. A lot of good stuff to check out there. But next week, on April 18th, Bill has a new book coming out, The War on Virtue, How the Ruling Class is Killing the American Dream. Do check that out. It's going to be available through Sophia Press out on April 18th, but it can also be purchased right now on Amazon. It's not for pre-order. You can actually get it there, or Sophia Press next week, and I believe you can pre-order through Sophia Press now. Now, Bill, I do want to spend a little bit more time than we normally do. I want to take a deep dive in this book because I think you really touch on a lot of important cultural, political, social events going on in the world today. So I do want to spend some time on this week and then next week, because I think this is just too much to fit into one episode. But let's start at the most basic points. Why did you write this book, and can you give us a little sort of thesis statement to sort of boil it down for the dear viewer?
Right. And next week we'll talk about the substantive issues there, but let's find out, right, why did I write this book? The subtext of this book is the attack by the white ruling class, well-educated people on African Americans. It's not white supremacist, crazy right-wing people who the average black person needs to be worried about. They have to be worried about the people who claim to be on their side and who are representing them. I'm not saying all, but many of the people in the ruling class have given up on black people. That was what motivated me to do this book, because I've worked with blacks a good part of my life, and I know they can learn like everybody else and do extremely well, provided you give them the tools. Now, what tools am I talking about? The book's thesis comes down to this. If you want to succeed in American life, whether you're a golfer, a dentist, a salesman, a magician, it doesn't make any difference. You have to embody what I call the vital virtues. I've looked at successful individuals and successful demographic groups, and they all have in common three things. They exercise self-discipline, self-control, impulse control. They accept personal responsibility for their situation. And these are people who also know that you've got to have perseverance, grit, to stick it out. If you have these three vital virtues, it doesn't guarantee success. But I can tell you one thing right now. I can guarantee you that you'll never be a success in anything unless you can persevere, exercise personal responsibility, and self-control. Look at the athletes. I mentioned a few of them in the book. I look at Tom Seaver, the great Met pitcher, Tom Brady. Look at Michael Jordan. These people succeeded in every walk of life. Brady was not even a star quarterback in high school. He struggled in college, even when he started out. Michael Jordan has said, listen, if you have some difficulties in life, if you see a wall, you've got to go around it. You've got to go through it somehow or another, because we're all faced with this kind of situation. And there's so many other examples that one could give. But then there are groups in our society. I look at what I call the four most successful demographic groups in America as measured by education and as measured by income. Jews, Asians, Mormons, and Nigerians. They are the four elite groups in our society. Notice that two of them are, quote, people of color, Nigerians and Asians. So much for the argument that people of color can't succeed. Tell that to the West Indies. Tell that to the Nigerians. Tell that to the Chinese or the Japanese and the Vietnamese. All right? The reason why African Americans haven't succeeded is because they haven't been given the right family structure to work with and to exercise and inculcate the vital virtues, and that's because the ruling class has been working against them.
Right. Now, one of the premises that you're highlighting there, though, is that the ruling class is working against these virtues and sort of attacking the vital virtues. And one example you give is of Amy Wax. Could you explain that a little bit more for your viewers probably not as familiar with
Right.
this.
Amy Wax is not exactly a household name. She's a brilliant lawyer at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. A few years ago, she co-authored an op-ed piece, a very short op-ed piece, Philadelphia Inquirer, with Larry Alexander out of West Coast School. And basically what Wax said is that if you want to succeed in America, you have to have the bourgeois virtues, which are very similar, not identical, but very similar to the vital virtues of personal responsibility, perseverance, and the like. She was crucified by the law faculty and the National Lawyers Guild, which is the Communist Front, not even much of a front anymore, for mentioning this. So are we supposed to conclude from this that it's racist to insist that everybody, Latinos and blacks and everybody else, exercise the vital virtues? That's what people want? She talked about the importance of the nuclear family. Should we dissemble it even further than what it is? We'll talk more about that next week. But it's astonishing. Here's a woman who is basically saying, we know what it takes to succeed. And you got to give these virtues to people. But you see, the mentality of the left is it's all structural oppression that keeps people down. And so that's why they persecuted this woman.
Yeah. And it's not just the lawyers and legal activists and academia that get upset about this. In the book, you cite an example from the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. And some of the things they put out to undermine the vital virtues. And you write, quote here, in 2021, the museum featured an exhibit that defined whiteness as self-reliance, the nuclear family, the scientific method, objectivity, hard work, Christianity, delayed gratification, and respect for authority. Now, these seem like very much what you need to succeed, but why would people sort of condemn these things?
The ruling class, which is mostly white, have given up on black people. They are the ultimate racist in our society. And if you want to teach black kids that you are acting white, which is what they say, and you just read it, by striving to engage in hard work, objectivity, what would you recommend? Slovenliness? Sloth? Would you recommend that they don't be objective? Self-reliance? Would you recommend dependency? The scientific method, has that become the enemy of society? All of these kinds of features are necessary if you're going to succeed in society, but they're teaching young black kids and older black individuals that this is acting like whitey. You know, this is the kind of prescription that the Ku Klux Klan would cheer. All right? And am I saying that the white ruling class are like the Ku Klux Klan? Not in terms of its violent expression, but I am saying that they're worse than the Ku Klux Klan in the sense that they have this moral position in society. They are the elites. They are the decision makers, and they allow this to be taught to young black kids and white kids, that if you work hard and you're self-reliant, that there's something wrong with you. That's acting like whitey. Now, if you wanted to keep blacks down, if that were the goal, that's the goal of the Klan, well, that's what I would recommend. And these people are the white ruling class. They don't believe that blacks can succeed like everybody else. That's what makes them racist. Of course, blacks can succeed like anybody else.
Yeah. And I know there's sort of this, particularly more on conservative sides, to say that, we used to be fine until like 5 minutes ago, and then this woke culture just started permeating. But as you point out in the book, that this is actually something that dates back to the slave era.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of these social scientists?
I want to introduce someone to the viewer who you may not have heard of. His name is George Fitzhugh. Not exactly a household name. George Fitzhugh was the first sociologist in the United States of America, and he wrote his books back in the 1850s. He was considered a progressive, a man of the left, and he argued very strongly that we must maintain slavery. Now, wait a minute, you might say, how could a guy on the left, a progressive, argue that slavery was good for black people? He said that, and you should read the book and see exactly what he said. I'm paraphrasing. I'm being kind. He basically said that black people are stupid. They can never learn. They're going to wind up like cannibals. He said, so if you have the end of slavery, That means they have to compete against the white man in a market economy, in capitalism. He was so much against capitalism and so convinced that black people were inferior, intellectually and in every way inferior to white people, that it's better off to keep the blacks as slaves. He said they are the happiest and freest people in America because the white man took care of them. He fed them, he took care of them. And people might say, well, all right, so you found one nut, lefty sociologist back in the 1850s. Oh, no, people. I got a lot of these people in the book. Let's fast forward to the latter part of the century. Richard Ely of the progressive era said the same thing. You can't do anything with these blacks. They just can't. They're just not smart enough to take care of themselves. Now, Charles Murray, let's fast forward to 1988. Charles Murray, the distinguished social scientist, he wrote a brilliant article back in 1988 called The Coming of the Custodial Democracy. And what he said was this: we're going to live in a society where the custodians will be white people and they're going to take care of black people because they've given up on black people. It's very similar to what Fitzhugh said and Eli said. All right? They can't do it. They can't cut it on their own. Now, the white ruling class today, that would include the Biden administration. Some of the biggest white racists in America today are working in the Biden administration. They have given up on black people, which is why they always keep the conversation about quotas and dumbing things down and reparations and doing, equity education and the like. Okay? They don't talk that way to the Asians, do they? They don't talk that way to the Nigerians, who are also dark-skinned people. They don't talk that way to the West Indians, the islanders. They do very well. They're talking about the African-American homegrown ones in this country. They've given up on them. And what he said is that basically, just as we have Indian reservations, wards of the state, that's the direction we're going to go with blacks. And that's what's happening in this country today. Instead of insisting that we have the strongest intact families, that we have good schools and the like, and that we teach the vital virtues to blacks like everybody else, we instead are saying, basically, we know you can't cut it on your own. We will politely help you along and we'll fix things. That's what equity means. We're going to fix it. So everybody, all the track runners, get across the finish line at the same time. That's not the way the real world works. We can help blacks succeed. Many blacks have succeeded in this country. In fact, more blacks have succeeded in this country than any country in the history of the world, quite frankly. And so that needs to be said.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say, one of your arguments would be that the ruling class, white ruling class in particular, is defiling the legacy of Martin Luther King, that they're trashing it and moving in a completely different direction than what he would have envisioned?
Martin Luther King, look, he loved what this country was founded on. He said, we have a promissory note from white people about the Declaration, the Constitution. It's just that they haven't made good on it yet. But we got the founding principles. Without them, you get nowhere. He obviously understood that merit counts. He obviously said that we have to judge you by your character, not by the color of your skin. And he wanted that promissory note to come due. And he had nothing but praise for the founders and for Abraham Lincoln. And now, basically, the critical race theory proponents are spitting in his face. People like Kendi and others. Critical race theory basically means that all white people, not some, all white people are racist. All of them are oppressors. And the only way for black people to succeed is to have more discrimination against white people today and in the future, because that's the only answer. In other words, they hate the family. They hate the vital virtues. They hate everything that makes everybody else a success. They teach racism in the name of combating racism, which is the most perverse of all propositions. And so the idea that everybody can make it, like Martin Luther King said, they regard him as being too white. Mm-hmm. Martin Luther King is a white guy who sold out. That's their attitude. And they're teaching hatred in the schools. And so when I point out in the book, when a little girl, a 6-year-old girl, goes home and says, "Mommy, am I evil?" And she said, "Why would you say that?" "Because the teacher said today that I am." She says, "What did you do?" She said, "I didn't do anything, Mommy." She said, "Because I'm white." You see, This is the kind of madness. We are teaching racism in the name of combating racism. And this is all being driven by the white ruling class, and a number of black elites as well, and others. But they are setting the table. If they really believed that blacks were equal, as I do and as you do, then you just simply demand more of them. When I worked in Spanish Harlem, I demanded of my students, and guess what? They performed, okay? If you give people the tools, they will perform. And the tools are the vital virtues of personal responsibility, of perseverance, self-control. If you possess those vital virtues, you're on your way to success. But what we are doing today is that we are crushing them. We are undermining them. They're under assault. And no group suffers the most, more than African Americans. And this is the greatest racist scam in American history, that the people who pledge to be on the side of blacks are often their biggest enemy.
Well, there's a lot more to unpack, and I'd like to save that for next week, because I think we've done a good job today of going over the mindset and how this works. But beyond just people thinking these terrible thoughts, they actually do have real world impacts. And next week, as we continue the journey through the war on virtue, I want to talk a little bit more about that. So, dear viewer, do stay tuned for next week. Unpack these thoughts a little bit more. Today was a little bit more on the thought process, and next week we're going to take a look at what that thought process leads to in the real world. So a lot more interesting stuff to come on that front. Again, dear viewer, if you are interested in purchasing the book, you can do it on Amazon, pre-order on Sophia Press. It's available now, or available on Amazon now. Pre-order on Sophia Press.
Well, let me mention one other thing. It's available on Tuesday with some Sophia Press, Amazon now. Right now, they're available in hardback and on Kindle. In a couple of weeks, it'll be available as an audio book. Now, that's laborious practice that I had to go through with our staffer, Nick, who does a good job of doing all the tech stuff on that. But it's worth it. And in a couple of weeks, it should be available on Amazon and through Sophia. So if you prefer to hear a book in the car, and it's my voice, it's not somebody else's voice, because people say that you kind of know my voice, so didn't give it out to Johnny Jones across the street at Harry's bar. I did it, okay? So anyhow,
yeah,
enjoy it that way.
Yeah, definitely check that out. So different formats to listen to the book, read the book. Also, do check out our website, CatholicLeague.org. Like I mentioned, we had a lot of good stuff going on this week. We'll have a link in the description below to the website, so you can see that. While you're at the website, do consider signing up for our emails and becoming a member of the Catholic League. Your support greatly helps. And if you could give this video a like and subscribe, that will greatly help us. And we'll be back next week with more on the war on virtue. Thank you for watching. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.